It is 6:54 a.m. in Starbase, Texas, a gorgeous sunrise, and Starship is targeting liftoff in just 30 minutes and 18 seconds from now at 7:25 a.m. Central Time. As you can see, it is a beautiful day in South Texas for the 5th flight test of Starship. Good morning, Star people. I'm Kate Tice.
And I'm Jesse Anderson, and we are joining you live from SpaceX Hawthorne with a great big crowd here this morning. It's been roughly 4 months since our last Starship flight, and we've got a big morning ahead of us.
Flight 5, has a few primary objectives and one big first. We may be attempting to catch the Super Heavy booster. The teams at Starbase have been hard at work around the clock, upgrading hardware across the entire tower with focus on the chopsticks, the 2 mechanical arms that will reach out and catch the returning booster. We're only going to attempt the catch if everything on the booster and tower checks out after launch, but either way, excitement is definitely guaranteed.
Definitely. Today's Starship features a completely reworked heat shield with stronger tiles and a secondary layer, which is an extra layer of protection for the ship that will protect from any of the that will help protect if there's any missing or damaged tiles. Now, not only did we replace the entire heat shield with our newest generation of stronger tiles for today's flight, we'll also be flying a handful of aluminum tiles that are there to help the team understand the thermodynamic environment during re-entry. If you were with us for Flight 4, you'll know how hard those heat shield tiles worked during the ship's re-entry.
Did they ever? As you can see there, they worked incredibly hard. This big heat shield rework that we're talking about promises to increase the likelihood of Starship being better protected during controlled re-entry as it heads towards its flip maneuver and landing burn for a soft splashdown on target in the Indian Ocean, just like we did in Flight 4. And we'll have to wait and see, keep your fingers crossed, but we may have some new views in store for you today as well.
Right, like all test flights, we want to learn as much as possible, and views of Starship during all phases of flight help us to keep improving the vehicle for recovery and reuse.
Now, thinking forward to when Starship is flying regularly, it will take the heaviest payloads to space, land humans on the moon again after more than half a century, and ultimately fly people further into space than ever before. And getting there will require us to rapidly iterate and fly often, which is why we're working so hard to scale operations at Starbase.
Yeah, the faster that we learn now, the faster we can improve and evolve Starship to achieve reliable flights and rapid reusability. We've been designing this vehicle from day one to realize a vision of having an entire city of people on Mars, something we know will take launching millions of pounds of cargo and equipment into space spread across thousands of flights. This future will require many Starships that can fly again and again, and today's flight is a critical step on that path.
So buckle up your seatbelts because here we go. The moon and Mars are not nearly as far in the future as you may think. In fact, we're planning to send Starships to Mars as soon as 2026.
You might be familiar with the Starlink logo, and there you can see it on your screen. It's an iconic representation of the Mars Transfer Orbit, also called the Home and Transfer Orbit. This is how fundamental Mars is to SpaceX. This transfer window, or a time when the Earth and Mars are the closest to each other, opens every 26 months and is only open for about 2 to 3 months at a time for a vehicle with Starship's power. And it just so happens that the next Mars transfer window opens in 2 years towards the end of 2026.
Yeah, lining up a launch to Mars is similar to how we launched to the International Space Station, where we time launches to match the station's orbit. If we didn't do this, we'd need more propellant and more time to get there.
Exactly. So the first opportunity that we have to fly Starships to Mars, we plan on doing it. These first flights to Mars will be uncrewed and will test the reliability of landing intact. If those landings go well, the first crewed flights will follow soon after.
So it's safe to say it's all happening, and flights like today's are what's going to get us there. Not only have we made several improvements to the Starship flying today based on what we've learned from our last flight, including extensive upgrades to Starship's hardware and software, we've also made improvements to the launch tower and catch mechanisms.
And if you've noticed in some of the live views this morning, our teams have completed stacking the second launch tower, which will be coming online next year. Having two operational launch towers paired with ships and boosters rolling off the line in our new Star Factory will allow us to increase our flight cadence and test even more rapidly. And just a few miles away from the two towers, things are moving really fast at the heart of Starbase. Star Factory is rapidly coming online, with production teams already using the space as construction continues. The 1 million square foot Star Factory brings many parts of the manufacturing process under one roof for the first time, enabling moving as much system integration work as possible earlier in the build process, with the goal of eventually producing hundreds of Starships a year.
That's crazy. It's such an impressive building. So, for example, teams can assemble an entire nose cone structure of a ship into a single piece and work on its internal systems all in one place. So if you're working on Starship and you have a question about the steps that you're working that happen before or after yours, instead of having to leave the building and go and find the person or the team with the answer or waste time sending an email and waiting for their response, odds are you're right next to that person or team, and now you're working right alongside them, so you don't have to wait for a response.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it a lot more efficient and faster to communicate. So not only are we rapidly iterating on these spacecraft themselves, but we're also innovating the way that they're made.
It's almost too much to keep up with.
We're also posting updates on our account on X. If you can't keep up, that'll help you. So if you don't already, make sure that you follow us at SpaceX on X. And I have a feeling it's going to get pretty busy.
Oh, that is definitely an understatement.
And it's definitely going to be very exciting today. So with that, let's meet today's Starship on the pad. Starship features two major parts, the ship, which has 6 Raptor engines, and the Super Heavy booster, which has 33 Raptor engines. The current iteration of Starship is essentially an experimental vehicle flying for development. With a few planned upgrades, Starship will have 3 times the thrust of Saturn V, plus the added benefit of full reusability. Starship 2 will be capable of carrying more than 100 tons to orbit, and Starship 3 will be able to lift more than 200 tons to orbit. The amount of mass we're able to launch per rocket is crucial to creating a self-sustaining city on Mars.
Now, to get a sense of how big Starship is, let's start with the average size human, which is about 2 meters high. Towering over our average human is the length of the Millennium Falcon, which comes in at 35 meters. Our Falcon 9 rocket, with the payload fairing attached, is double the size of the Millennium Falcon, standing at 70 meters. And nearly twice the size of that is the fully integrated Starship at 121 meters tall. The ship itself is about 50 meters tall, and the Super Heavy booster alone stands about 71 meters. And even crazier, eventually the ship and booster will get even taller with future design iterations.
Can't imagine it being taller than that. Starship's first stage has a diameter of roughly 2.5 times that of Falcon 9, and with 33 much larger Raptor engines, which you can see there on your screen. Moving up the vehicle, the ship features 6 Raptors, 3 sea-level engines, and 3 vacuum engines, which are optimized to operate in the vacuum of space. The ship is designed for vertical takeoff and landing on any hard surface, like the surface of the moon. The ship is also outfitted with 4 flaps to help aerodynamically control the vehicle's attitude during atmospheric flight and enable a precision landing.
To reach full reusability, ship must survive entry not just once, but over and over again. It took the teams at SpaceX about 3 years to develop the heat shield on Starship, and development for improvements is still ongoing. The ship's heat shield is composed of 18,000 hexagonal ceramic tiles designed to insulate the vehicle during atmospheric entry, where temperatures can be as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. And naturally, the tiles are designed for rapid reuse with no refurbishment between flights. As we mentioned earlier, today's Starship features a completely reworked heat shield with stronger tiles and a secondary protective layer. This promises to increase our chances of Starship making it through a controlled re-entry and hopefully a little more intact this time around. And in between our first and second stages is our hot stage, which we last saw in action on flights 2, 3, and 4. Speaking of, let's take a trip back in time and talk about that last flight. On June 6th, Starship successfully lifted off at 7:50 a.m. Central Time from Starbase, Texas, cleared the launch tower, and went on to accomplish several major milestones and firsts. As you can see there, Super Heavy booster lifted off successfully and completed a full duration ascent burn. I love the view of the sound waves there. Following separation, Super Heavy booster successfully completed its flip maneuver, boostback burn as well to send it toward the splashdown zone, and it also jettisoned the hot stage adapter, as you can see there. We don't have to jettison that adapter in future iterations because it'll be a different design. Now, as you can see here, the booster is returning back to Earth using those hypersonic grid fins to steer it towards a precise landing in the Gulf of Mexico. The footage that we have coming up here, there it is from the buoy. I still remember seeing this on X for the first time, and it was so incredible to see that booster coming down, ending its flight with a soft splashdown 7 minutes and 24 seconds into the flight, and the crowd went wild.
And so did we. Starship's 6 second-stage Raptor engine successfully powered the vehicle to space and placed it on a trajectory that would re-enter less than 1 orbit later over the Indian Ocean. And following a coast phase in space, Starship re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, successfully making it through the phases of peak heating and max aerodynamic pressure, and demonstrating the ability to control the vehicle using its flaps while descending through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds. And of course, Starlink on Starship once again enabled real-time telemetry and live high-definition video throughout every phase of entry, with external cameras providing views all the way to the flight's conclusion.
Flight 4 ended with Starship, with, again, the crowd going bonkers, with Starship igniting its 3 center Raptor engines and executing the first flip maneuver and landing burn that we had seen since our high-altitude campaign. And that was followed by a soft splashdown of the ship in the Indian Ocean 1 hour and 6 minutes later.
And we were all glued to the monitors, watching the little flap that could the whole way down. Seeing the landing burn and splashdown was an incredible moment for the entire SpaceX team, and we'll be looking out for many more of these incredible moments today.
All right, so while today's mission profile is similar to Flight 4, we got a couple new test objectives, including catching the booster back at the launch tower.
In about 18 minutes from now, Super Heavy will ignite its 33 Raptor engines and lift off from Starbase. A little more than 2.5 minutes into flight, the Super Heavy booster will separate from the ship in a hot stage separation. After that separation, the booster will perform a flip maneuver followed by a boost back burn. And about 2 seconds after that burn ends, we'll jettison the booster's hot stage. As it heads back towards the ground, the booster will either attempt a landing, will have a landing burn, but then will either return to the tower or splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico.
Meanwhile, the ship's engines will remain lit for just under 6 minutes during its ascent phase before shutting down for the coast. The ship will coast for about 40 minutes or so, reaching a peak altitude of about 213 kilometers. After that coast phase, the ship will be attempting a controlled re-entry, including a flip maneuver and landing burn, like we saw on Flight 4, just before splashing down in the Indian Ocean. Now, we say attempting because, again, this is just a test and nothing is guaranteed.
Except excitement.
Well, of course there is that. Now, both the booster and ship have to contend with some extreme conditions on re-entry, which is where those heat shield tiles will be put to the test.
For this flight test, we do not expect to recover any hardware from the ship. With the exception of Falcon, this is no different than what happens to most rockets flying today that are expended, meaning that they fall into the ocean after completing their mission. Eventually, we will return and reuse Super Heavy boosters and Starships as we do today with Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy boosters. And in fact, we've landed Falcon boosters 352 times to date.
Oh, man, I hear you say that number, and that is just wild. I still remember the night, or at least most of the night, that Falcon landed for the first time, and it still feels like yesterday.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite moments at SpaceX. And returning Super Heavy promises to be an even more impressive sight and a huge moment on the road to rapid reusability.
Yeah, speaking of rapid reusability, future Starship designs will give Super Heavy boosters a lighter weight and integrated hot stage intended for full reusability, which will mitigate the need to jettison the hot stage like we'll do today. Similarly, even though ship recovery is not expected, the telemetry and data we receive all the way to the end is what we're what we're looking for, and is what will get us to a rapidly reusable Starship of the future.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, just like previous Starship flights, the payload for this mission is the data. All right, now that we have a handle on today's flight test, let's check in with Dan, who is right in the middle of the action. He's just a few kilometers from Starship on the pad. How's it going, Dan?
It's going great, Jesse. Welcome back to Starbase, everybody. It's been far too long. Little change of scenery this time. Right behind me is the Launch Control Center, where our flight controllers are counting down to our liftoff at 7:25 a.m. Central. We are a little bit later in our window. The main reason is we're working to clear out the range. Have not been tracking any technical issues so far to preclude that launch. So 7:25 a.m. Central, 12:25 UTC is what we're marching down to. As you can see, we're actively loading propellants onboard Super Heavy and Starship. Liquid methane for your fuel, liquid oxygen for the oxidizer. Prop load on the ship started at about T-minus 49 minutes, booster at T-minus 40 minutes. We're going to keep loading propellants on those vehicles right down to the wire. Ship will close out at about 3 minutes and 20 seconds before T0, and then booster just about 30 seconds later. Now, with our startup sequence, it's going to look very similar to what you saw on Flight 4. We already tested it with this booster and its static fire. We're going to see the Raptors start to make fire at about T-minus 3 seconds, and then we'll start them up in 3 different banks. The first inner 13 will fire, and then about a second later, 15 of the outer ring engines, and then about 0.8 of a second after that, those final 5. Another reminder, if we need to hold, we have a built-in spot at T-minus 40 seconds. We can hold for stuff like if we need to finish clearing the range or if any other technical issues pop up, just kind of in the last second. But if there's nothing holding us back, we're going to go right past that and go down to 0. So, I mean, as of right now, we're just under 14 minutes away from liftoff, not working any technical issues. Range is expected to clear. We're just clearing out a few more boats. And as you can see, the weather is perfect. We had 100% go for launch from the weather officer, so that was pretty unprecedented and something we really like to hear. If we're not able to go today, since we are loading prop, it would likely be about 48 hours before our next attempt. But good thing we're going to launch today. Really looking forward to being able to turn around and see it this time. Counting down to 7:25 a.m. Central, and I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes. I'll send it back to you in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Dan. Now, one of the most exciting objectives for Flight 5 today is attempting to return the booster to the launch site that you see right there, and it will be caught by the tower. We refer to this simply as booster catch.
As you've heard us say, Starship and Super Heavy are designed to be rapidly reused, which is why we've developed a novel way of returning the vehicles that leverages the same hardware we use for stacking ahead of flight.
Right now, when we recover our Falcon boosters, they either return to a separate landing zone on land or to a drone ship in the ocean, both of which require time to transport the vehicle back to the launch site. In order for us to achieve truly rapid reusability, we need a quicker turnaround. And you can't get much faster than returning the launch vehicle right back to the launch site where it needs to be in order to launch again.
For today's booster catch attempt, while there are thousands of criteria that need to be met, there are 3 primary gates that will be in play. In order to proceed, automated checks have to indicate we have a healthy booster and a healthy tower, and the flight director must issue a manual command, which is informed by manual checks from the flight control team. If this command is not sent prior to the completion of the boostback burn, or if automated health checks show unacceptable conditions with Super Heavy or the tower, the booster will default to a trajectory that takes it to a landing burn and soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
Now, thinking to the future when we're operational, after a booster returns to the launch tower, it will be inspected and reloaded with propellants and then ready to launch another ship to orbit. For today's test, however, we're only going to attempt the catch, like Jesse said, if everything on the booster and tower checks out after launch. And of course, we will let you know as soon as we know if it's a go. And we're going to be listening very keenly for that call out. Now, as always, we accept no compromises when it comes to the safety of the public and our team. So to that end, the area all around the pad and the flight path are cleared well in advance.
Exactly. A lot of things have to go right in order to line up the booster catch. So don't be surprised if we don't attempt the catch today. Either way, today's flight will generate data that will continue to inform our future flights and help us get to that operational cadence.
Yeah. Oh, you can't forget what else it will generate.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I mean, I was going to say a sonic boom.
Oh, I was going to say excitement, but that's a really good reminder.
Now, if we do make it to a catch attempt today, Super Heavy may generate a sonic boom upon its return. And that's basically a brief thunder-like noise that we hear when an aircraft or other object travels faster than the speed of sound. Anyone that has been in the area for a Falcon 9 land landing in Florida or California, or even some space shuttle landings, may have heard one of these.
Generally, the only impact in those surrounding areas of a sonic boom is the brief noise, with variables like weather and distance impacting if or how the sonic boom is heard. Here's a brief look at how these sonic booms look and sound on Falcon.
I know a lot of people will be excited when they hear the sonic boom.
And these are going to provide quite a show because you're going to hear those sonic booms.
Booster landing leg deployed.
That sonic boom is great for us.
That thunderclap broke the sound barrier.
Side booster separation confirmed.
Just heard the two sonic booms here in the room.
Booster landing confirmed.
As our test flights continue, we plan to demonstrate ship-to-ship propellant transfer, which will be important in preparation for Starship taking astronauts to the moon as part of NASA's Artemis program. SpaceX will perform one uncrewed demonstration flight before NASA's Artemis 3 mission, which will be the first human surface expedition since 1972. Also, in preparation for missions to the moon and Mars, we're gaining tons of knowledge from our human spaceflight missions, including free flyer flights like our recent commercial astronaut mission, Polaris Dawn.
Polaris Dawn was the first of up to 3 missions in the Polaris program, which is demonstrating new technologies, conducting extensive research, and will culminate in a flight of Starship with humans on board.
After nearly 5 days in orbit, Dragon and the 4-person Polaris Dawn crew safely splashed down on September 15th off the coast of Florida, completing the first human spaceflight mission of the Polaris program. The Polaris Dawn crew performed some incredible firsts during their mission. Dragon and the crew reached 1,408.1 kilometers, the highest Earth orbit ever flown, and the farthest humans have been from our planet since the Apollo program.
The crew also performed the first ever commercial EVA, or extravehicular activity. And as you can see there, they were wearing the new EVA suits that we developed here in-house. This was an incredible moment to see Jared and then later Sarah emerge and perform this EVA with Earth behind. Now, in addition to this incredible spacewalk, they also conducted about 36 research studies and experiments from 31 partner institutions, including NASA. And in addition to all of that, they also tested Starlink laser-based communications in space. The data gathered from Polaris Dawn missions is invaluable, much like the data that we're going to see after today's flight test of Starship. So we're coming down to T-minus about 7 minutes. Let's check in with Dan.
Hey, thanks, Kate. So yeah, we're right at about 7 minutes away from launch. The main thing we are still working is that range clear. Again, we have to make sure boats, airspace, everything is cleared out of the way for our ascent corridor, basically the Gulf of Mexico, where we're launching through before we can actually launch. And so we're working on clearing out just a few more boats. We do have a window, remember. So if we end up holding at like a T-minus 40 seconds, we can hold for several minutes, allow those boats to get out of the way, and then we can launch. Our window is from 7 to 7:30 Central, so we don't have a huge amount of time today, but we do have some margin if we need to work with it to still get off the ground today. For now, though, we're coming up on finishing prop load on both vehicles. Header tanks are pretty much topped out on the ship. Those are going to be used for its landing burn. And again, we're going to be closing out all of the prop load at about T-minus 3 minutes, 20 seconds for the ship, and then just 30 seconds later for booster. One kind of cool thing to talk about, so the folks in launch control behind me, after liftoff, they're going to have some pretty special tasks today if we're going to go through with the catch. They're going to be doing some really detailed inspections just visually of all of the different tower systems, a lot of those things that we upgraded, just to make sure that we are in the right posture to actually proceed with the catch. So they'll be working kind of fast and furious behind the scenes to inform the flight director's manual command to send the booster back. So if we hear that command being sent, that's going to be just the roof's going to come off. That's going to be a really exciting moment. So otherwise, if we don't go today, as you guys talked about, there is a chance, and if we don't send the booster back, we'll do a landing burn and a splashdown in the Gulf, and then that's just another landing burn to gather more data, learn more lessons from, and then we'll come back and try the catch again on the next one. But as of right now, we're coming up on 5 minutes. There is a chance that we'll hold or extend into the end of our window, so don't be surprised if that ends up happening. But if those boats do get out of the way, we are just about 5 minutes away from launch. So I'll check back in just a moment, but back over to you, Kate and Jesse.
Thanks, Dan. Our rapid iterative development approach has been the basis for all of SpaceX's major innovative advancements, including Falcon, Dragon, and Starlink. Today, we're testing hardware and systems, and we need to know how they perform under the most extreme conditions. We'd much rather find the bugs now during testing than later on when there's more on the line. And to reiterate, while we do determine an acceptable level of technical risk on our vehicle and pad in order to learn as fast as possible, we accept no compromises when it comes to the safety of the public or our team. So that is to say, this is only the fifth of many future flight tests of Starship before it becomes fully operational.
You might remember the Starlink panels that are incorporated into Starship, and you can see them there on your screen, those rectangular panels on Starship's nose cone. Starlink brings us the epic views in space and on re-entry, and also helps deliver us the critical flight data engineers need to continue development. In addition to enabling our rapid iteration on Starship, Starlink is also enabling life-saving communication here on Earth. SpaceX is sending tens of thousands of Starlink kits in response to Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and providing free service through the end of the year to support recovery efforts. The Starlink team also worked with T-Mobile to activate our direct-to-cell satellites to provide basic texting on T-Mobile and emergency alerts for all phones and carriers of those in affected areas. If a phone connects to a Starlink satellite, it will have 1 to 2 bars of signal and show T-Mobile SpaceX in the network name. SpaceX's direct-to-cell constellation has not been fully deployed, so these services are being delivered on a best effort basis.
Starlink is enabling life-saving communication here on Earth and continues to help us push the limits in space. In the short term, by providing great views and real-time data on our next few flights, particularly through re-entry, which historically is a blackout period for all communications.
All right, so we're coming up on 2 minutes, 30 seconds away from launch. We were hearing like there was a pretty good chance we were going to hold at T-minus 40 seconds, but surprise, now it sounds like we might not be. So we are just a little over 2 minutes away, so a couple more things going to be happening. We did just close out our propellant load on the ship and the booster, so 10 million pounds of propellant on that vehicle on the pad here at Starbase, getting ready to go. We're going to start clearing out all of the lines that are basically pushing all of that propellant to the vehicles. Those get cleaned out or cleared out on the ground before we lift off. We're doing some final checks on the vehicle, the thrust vector control that we're going to use to steer it, as well as the guidance system doing its final alignment, just a lot of our final checkouts. But we are starting to hear that it looks like the range is going to be clear at our liftoff time of 7:25 a.m. Central, 12:25 UTC. So that puts us 1 minute, 20 seconds away from launch. Still not tracking any technical issues. That range clear is the only thing that's been potentially poking at our launch. So I'm going to start to quiet down. We'll hear our flight director for today, Tristan Pierce, give some of the final call outs. As of right now, we are 1 minute away from liftoff.
Flight directors go for launch.
Best words you could possibly hear 20 seconds away from liftoff.
T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Vehicles pitching downrange. Booster after chamber pressure nominal.
"30 seconds into the flight, the rumble's just starting to reach us here at launch control.
Booster and ship,
That
avionics
is the
power and
sound
telemetry nominal.
of 33 Raptor engines.
Max Q.
Now pass through the maximum aerodynamic pressure, the most stress the vehicle's going to see on the way uphill. All right, our next major milestone coming up, it's going to be hot staging. We're going to see the engines ignite on ship to push it away from the booster. All right, so hot staging is going to be the next thing coming up. First, we're going to see the booster's engines start to shut down, all but 3. We're going to do what's called most engines cut off instead of main engine cut off, because 3 are going to keep going, and then we're going to see the engines on ship ignite. Right now, the tower team is doing their go, no go. And we might hear some really good words soon, too. All right. Can still see it up behind me. That is one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen in my entire life. Coming up on hot staging next.
Ship engine
There's
startup.
most engines cut off.
Stage separation. Booster
Stage separation, hot stage separation confirmed. Ship under its own power. I'm seeing 6 out of 6 Raptors lit. Hopefully I got a booster on the way back to me. I'm going to send it to you guys in Hawthorne.
Oh man, that was absolutely incredible. I loved how the crowd
Chamber pressure is nominal.
crowd here in Hawthorne all went ooh at that first view of the blue flames from the booster. As you can see there, first stage currently performing, is now making its way back to the launch site. Again, we are
Ship avionics power and telemetry nominal.
the booster and the tower are both performing automated checks to make sure we are go for the booster to return to the launch pad for that catch. And once those are complete, the flight director...
Booster, boostback for shutdown. Flight directors go for booster return.
And we did hear that the tower is go for catch. So that was one of the big criteria we were looking for.
This view
We'll
here.
wait to hear that the go for catch has been sent.
Beautiful view here from the ship.
And so exciting to hear that we got a go for booster catch. That means it's going to be a really exciting morning. Again, the booster is making its way back towards now land in order to make that catch attempt in the tower.
So incredible to see these views. You can see the ship on the right-hand side of your screen. All 6 Raptor engines are under full power. Once again, the booster is making its way back to the launch site. We are going to try and catch it using the chopsticks on the launch tower, the exact same tower that it just launched from just, 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, and the booster.
Starship on nominal
Guys,
trajectory.
I can confirm the command was sent for the booster to come back.
That is
So I'm
incredible
looking
news.
up right now. It's pretty much right overhead of us, and we can see it starting to come down.
I can't wait for us to hear the sonic boom through Dan's mic.
Right.
That is going to be incredible. It was so cool to hear the liftoff. And so once again, it's successful on-time liftoff of Starship Flight 5. The ship has separated from the booster. The booster is there on your screen. It is making its way back to the launch site. We are going to attempt the catch using the chopsticks. We did hear the confirmation that the command was sent to the tower. We are go for catch.
And in order to...
And guys, we should just be about 30 seconds away from our landing burn. It's going to happen in 3 phases. We're going to land 13 engines, burn off all of that velocity. Oh, we can see it coming down through the plume.
Booster coming in hot for booster catch.
We're going to ignite 13 of those Raptor engines, and this view is incredible right now. You can see how fast this vehicle is moving on the left-hand screen.
Landing burn has
13
been
engines.
ignited. We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks now in view.
Booster landing burn shutdown.
Megadilla had popped the booster.
This is absolutely insane. On the first ever attempt, we have successfully caught the Super Heavy booster back at the launch tower.
What an incredible view!
Are you kidding me?
Dan,
Wow.
I don't know about you, but we're losing our stuff up here.
Starship in terminal bed.
Guys, I'm sorry. Like, even in this day and age, what we just saw, that looked like magic.
That
Oh,
was-
wow.
Damn,
Wow.
your view must have been insane! We are still going wild over here over this.
Folks, this is a day for the engineering history books. This is a live view of the Super Heavy booster as it has just been successfully caught back at the very same launch tower that it just came from. Dan, I love this. You are reflecting exactly what everybody else here in Hawthorne, except maybe a little bit more because you got to see it with your own eyes.
How was that?
Ship
We
landing
got
cutoff.
it. Well, I mean, I can't even describe that. Oh, by the way, ship, main engine cut off, ship's in orbit, but I am like shaking right now. That was,
Yeah, This is not,
Yeah,
I mean,
let's check in on ship.
it's hard to believe that.
Starship nominal orbit insertion.
All right, exciting news there. It's hard to believe that, booster isn't the only excitement that we have today. Just confirmation there. A gorgeous view of planet Earth behind the ship.
Saved.
And it is now in the orbit that we expected it to. This is just an incredible day. Live views there as the booster vents, some pressures there. That is a live view from the top of the tower looking at the chopsticks.
I am still in disbelief. I'm trying to catch my tears just like the chopsticks caught the booster. It has been nonstop since liftoff. And we are all so excited about everything that's been happening so far this morning. With the booster having completed its job for today, we are going to take a short break for the next 30 minutes. We'll return back at T plus 40 minutes while the ship continues to coast before re-entry.
Oh man, and as with previous flights, Starlink may actually enable us to talk with the ship through re-entry with no communication blackout. We of course are still testing Starlink during this phase of flight, so nothing is certain, but if we do have views, we'll be sure to bring those to you live.
Views or no views, we'll see you back here at T plus 40 minutes for coverage of Starship's re-entry, flip maneuver, landing burn, and splashdown. Welcome back to Starship's 5th flight test. It has been an exciting day so far. Even the crowd here is still so excited. We lifted off from Starbase at 7:25 a.m. Central Time. The Super Heavy booster and ship had a successful separation, as well as a good boostback burn and good separation of the hot stage adapter. The Super Heavy booster then completed the landing burn with 13 Raptor engines igniting and slowing down the vehicle perfectly for Mechazilla to catch the Super Heavy booster for the first ever land recovery of the vehicle.
Now, it is insane to think that we're not done yet. We still have, in about 48 minutes, the ship will re-enter. All the flaps that will today, not that could. The ship will re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. Now, as a reminder, one of the main goals of today's test flight is for the ship to make it through the extreme heat of re-entry and to do so in a controlled manner. We learned a lot about this phase during Flight 4 and, as a result, completely reworked the heat shield, but more on all that in just a minute. Now, re-entry is typically a portion of flight where we don't have communications with the spacecraft because re-entering, it'll be re-entering at about 8 kilometers per second, or about 5 miles per second of roughly orbital velocity. Now, those speeds, the spacecraft moving through the atmosphere results in friction and creates a plasma field around the vehicle. We saw this in action on Flight 4 thanks to Starlink, and wow, it was breathtaking. The blanket of plasma ends up distorting communication frequencies, so it's not uncommon to experience brief blackouts in communication, but hopefully that's not the case today.
And Kate, that's where Starlink has just kind of been just the unsung hero and the MVP of this test campaign. I mean, it's able to give us data, not just awesome video, but also data in real time as we're going through reentry. I mean, this is something that throughout the history of spaceflight just hasn't been possible. And this is an environment that is so unforgiving, so hard to model, so hard to understand. And for the first time ever, we're able to literally watch as it unfolds in real time, get that data in real time. And we're able to do that with Starlink. And it's great for us because we get to see something. We get to see the greatest light show on the planet or off the planet. But what it means for this program, we're able to learn tremendous amounts about our heat shield, our angle of attack, everything that we're doing as we're coming in through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds. And it's you can't just thank it enough. And also, special shout out, you're going to see some additional flap camera views. We've got a really amazing team of avionics, cameras, electronics, software people who made all that possible. And so hopefully they're going to give us an even better show on the way in today as we're coming in at about 5 times the speed of sound.
Yeah, those flaps, Dan, that you see there, that's what's helping.
Starship is in a good attitude for entry, approaching the entry interface.
And some good call-outs there, preparing for re-entry for Starship. And again, that's what Dan was mentioning, those flaps on the vehicle. And if you've been watching us for the last few minutes, you could see that the flaps were rotating around and helping orient the vehicle as it prepares for the beginning of re-entry today.
Yeah, exactly. Re-entry will be enabled by that heat shield that you see on the bottom half. That heat shield is made up of 18,000 hexagonal ceramic tiles, and they are designed to insulate the vehicle during atmospheric entry. At that point in time, temperatures can be as high as 26,000 degrees Fahrenheit or about 1,400 degrees Celsius. The design itself also permits for rapid reuse with no refurbishment between the flights. And fun fact that I think is just incredible in terms of scale, but the heat shield alone on the ship has a total mass of 10.5 tons, which is crazy because these things are really lightweight. They're made out of ceramic. We have a couple of them here. The one that I'm holding is used on flat surfaces, as let's see if we go that way, because as it's flat. The one that Jesse has is kind of more what you see there on the side.
Yeah, exactly. And having these different shapes, the flat version and the curved version, allow us to cover a lot more of the surface area of the vehicle. Again, we need to protect every portion of it. So even those curved surfaces, and especially the hinge area, if you watched Flight 4, is really what we want to make sure that we protect. And yeah, Kate, these are very, very lightweight.
But when you put 18,000 of them together, they add up to 10.5 tons, which is incredible. Now, we did mention earlier that the heat shield has been completely reworked.
Starship has entered the atmosphere, remains on a nominal entry trajectory.
We can start to see that plasma now starting to build up on the side. It's not quite full plasma yet, but we are starting to see that color indicate that the heat is building up on the heat shield.
Yeah, this is such a cool sight to see because you really never really have gotten to see this live before Flight
4.
Yeah, and as Kate mentioned, it's getting a little more red, as you can see there on your screen. That means that heat is building up, but that's exactly what these heat shield tiles are there for, is to protect against this plasma and this really, really extreme heat that the vehicle is going to see for about the next 10 more minutes or so.
Yeah, so the ship will attempt to light the 3 center Raptor engines, and those are the engines that can gimbal or maneuver or point, and they do that to help flip the ship until the engines point down so that it can land using the Raptor's thrust in the ocean. So that will happen after we get through this re-entry period. Again, now starting to see, and we also might start to see the flaps actuate a little bit here as the vehicle controls its roll during re-entry. That was one of the main learning points from Flight 3, was the roll control didn't work quite as well as we wanted it to. We learned that we needed some redundancies, so we added more roll control thrusters, and we'll see those in action as well today, as that was a Flight 3 learning that worked better on Flight 4 and still enabling that same design today.
Yeah.
Starship has passed through 85 kilometers altitude. Flaps now have control of the vehicle.
Great call out, as Kate mentioned, the flaps are controlling the attitude of the vehicle. And I love these views because it looks so calm. Everything is relative, right? So relative to this camera on the ship, it looks so calm and smooth, but the vehicle is traveling extremely fast. You can see the speed on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Starship is designed to land on Mars, where there are no runways or other humans to help out. So we also want rapid reusability. So we're doing propulsive landing instead of a more traditional means like parachutes. And so we will use the engines on this vehicle to help slow the vehicle down for a vertical landing.
Yeah. Now, entry is going to basically happen in 5 phases. The first is low drag, that lasts for about 3 minutes. Next is high heating, and that beginning when heating increases above the heat rate breakup limit. That lasts for about 10 minutes. We then have high dynamic pressure. Starship will continue to slow down and experience increased aerodynamic loads during that phase, and that will happen before reaching Mach 1, about a minute after.
Starship is approaching the peak heating phase of entry, remains on a nominal trajectory.
Okay, so that was phase 2 that he just called out, that I was mentioning. After peak heating is that dynamic pressure around Mach 1, and that will last about a minute after leaving the hypersonic area, and then we go into subsonic, and then, of course, landing burn. Wow, what an incredible view.
The colors are so amazing, and the colors actually also tell you a little bit about the temperature that the vehicle is seeing as well. So I think that's pretty cool that we get this amazing live visual.
Speaking of live visual, the flap, we have more views, more cameras on board Starship, as Dan mentioned a few minutes ago. We are hoping that all 4 flaps will stay more intact than they did last time. We did make some changes to the design in order to help enable
Starship
this.
is now experiencing peak heating, remains on a nominal entry trajectory.
Great news there. that Starship is continuing along the path that we intended it to fly. You can keep track with how fast it's going and how high it is above Earth using the display that is there on the bottom right-hand side of your screen.
And guys, this is where we're really going to see a lot of those improvements from Flight 4 really come into action. Is you guys kind of talked about, so it's called the static arrow. Those are kind of the poke out points on the flaps. Those get exposed to some pretty extreme heat environments, and so we added some additional, basically made it a lot more robust for the thermal protection there. And we learned not just from visuals and stuff like that. We had those missing tile tests on Flight 4 where we intentionally left some out, kept in some backup layers. They're called ablatives, which means they just gradually melt away to help dissipate the heat. And we've got an entire layer of ablative underneath the tiles on this Starship today. So even if you get a gap in a tile or a tile is broken, anything like that, we've got essentially backup options. And what we're really trying to do today is do an on-target landing. As we lost the flaps, you lose a lot of your control, and so we didn't land right on target last flight. This time we're trying to really nail the target within just tens of meters, and that'll just be a really huge step on feeling like we're closer to bringing a ship back. Obviously, there's a lot of work before we get there, but we just caught a booster. We're going to start looking real soon at when we can catch a ship.
So the view on your left is as a helicopter passes by Dan, bound at Starbase. The view on your left is a camera that's positioned near the nose of the ship, looking basically down toward the flap. The view on the right is looking perpendicular to the flap. So we're looking basically bird's eye view onto the flap on the left-hand side, and then a worm's eye view from the side with that view on the right.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Maverick just buzzed the tower. He might be coming back, so.
Now, these views brought to us by Starlink. It's incredible that we have this high-definition capability. In fact, that view on the left...
Starship is now halfway through the peak heating phase of entry, remains on a good trajectory.
So great news there, hearing that we're about halfway through the peak heating phase. Like I said earlier, this lasts roughly 10-ish minutes. And we did hear earlier that the flaps have control of the vehicle, so also good news there. It is incredible that we've basically had views the entire time.
Right, yeah. Thanks to Starlink.
My memory did black out a little bit after booster catch, so I think we had views. But all through the coast phase, we had some beautiful views of planet Earth behind the ship as it was in its orbit.
Yeah, and I also do want to point out on your right-hand screen, we've got a more encompassed view of the flap. As we watched in Flight 4, the hinge area was the area where we got a little bit of that burn through. This view, this new camera view on the ship, will help us be able to visually see more of what's happening in that area. And again, we have improved our heating tiles, and so hopefully we've protected the hinge a lot better this time.
Landing chill has started.
But again, these views are additional to the data that we get on these flight tests that help enable us kind of put the data that we get in the computer to the visuals that we see and try and align those and use that for improvements in the future.
Now, we heard a call out there saying that engine chill has begun. This is an indication that we are starting to flow a little bit of the super cold liquid oxygen through the hardware, through the Raptor engine, specifically the turbo pumps, to help ensure that the hardware is at the right temperature before we give a full push, a full flow of propellant at engine startup. So all of that to say, we are getting closer to the landing burn.
We definitely are. And again, if you look at the bottom right hand of your screen, you can see the altitude that the ship is, and it has been slowly making its way closer and closer to Earth. We're currently at about 63 kilometers from planet Earth, and you'll see that number trend lower and lower as we get closer and continue through this reentry.
Yeah, this is going to go on for a little, actually a while longer. We have about 10 minutes or so, roughly, before we execute the landing, the ignition for the landing burn, starting with the landing flip. So we're making a controlled reentry. This is one of the primary objectives for Starship today, is to demonstrate another controlled reentry, even more controlled than what we saw on Flight 4. And so far, that is looking good.
And then as we start to really get lower, we're going to start seeing the atmosphere's effects start to take place, and that's when we'll be dropping our speed down closer to the speed of sound. You'll see the flaps start to maneuver. We were able to do a landing burn on Flight 4, which kind of caught all of us off guard. It was pretty incredible after seeing the flaps survive through. And we're going to try and do another one on this flight today. We tweaked it a little bit, so we're going to try and splash down at a little bit of a gentler angle this time, instead of just kind of hit the water and fall over. And the goal with that is try and keep the ship intact, and then if we're able to then get some additional video of it, again, that's just more data. And everything we can see, everything we can get extra, like a couple extra seconds or minutes of data coming from the ship after
Starship has
splashdown.
passed through the peak heating phase of flight, approaching maximum entry dynamic pressure.
All right, we're through peak heating. Coming up is basically max Q part 2, where we're going to hit kind of that part of the curve where we're still moving really fast and the atmosphere is just dense enough that we're feeling the most pressure, but hopefully we're going to start feeling a little bit less heat now.
Looks like we got more views of each of the flaps on the ship as it's making its way back down to Earth. And we did pass through peak heating and still got really good views throughout that whole period. Typically during the highest heat on the vehicle, we tend to build up a lot of plasma, and that's typically when we would lose connection or views of the vehicle. But again, with Starlink, we were able to get some live views throughout that entire process there.
And we're coming up, we'll start hearing a couple more milestones in about 4 minutes or so, when we start getting down to like the transonic, the subsonic, when we're starting to move closer to and beneath the speed of sound. And I mean, we're getting live views, we're getting live data. We've got a couple additional tests on this one today where we left off some missing tiles again to test some additional backup layers. We also have, I don't know if we can still quite see them in this view, but you may have noticed we had some kind of silvery looking tiles on Starship as well. And those were pretty much standard tiles, but they were wrapped in aluminum. And it was a pretty simplistic, straightforward one where aluminum starts to melt at roughly the same temperature where steel starts to lose its strength, not necessarily melt. And so if we see stuff melting, we know what our steel is going to be exposed to. But yeah, 59 minutes since launch, should be coming up on transonic and everything in just about 3 minutes.
Now the views here, we have coverage of all 4 flaps. We can see, so for those that perhaps didn't catch a glimpse of the vehicle before liftoff, there are 2 flaps at the forward end and 2 flaps at the aft end. The larger camera view that is there on the right-hand side of your screen, that is a view of one of the aft end or the bottom end flaps. We can start to see some heat buildup and peeking through on one of the flaps there in the top left-hand corner of your screen. Once again, Starship now at T+1 hour and 9 seconds into its flight today, re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Currently about 45 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, now 44. We are targeting a soft splashdown in the Indian Ocean, about, northwest-ish of Australia. And we are attempting to, as we did on Flight 4, perform a flip maneuver as well as
Starship is at maximum entry dynamic pressure, remains on a good trajectory.
All right, so that is great news there. Like Dan said earlier, this is basically max Q part 2. So this is the greatest amount of aerodynamic loads that the vehicle will experience during its flight. It's coming back through the Earth's atmosphere. It was above the Earth's atmosphere in space where there was no friction. We can obviously see heat as evidence of that friction buildup. The atmosphere is actually helping to slow the vehicle down. If you're watching the telemetry in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can see that speed decelerating rapidly. Now, the 4 flaps on the ship help steer the vehicle, and one of the main objectives for the ship today is to demonstrate controlled re-entry during this phase of flight, this re-entry phase.
Yeah, and we have 6 engines on ship, but we only need 3 of them, the 3 sea-level engines. We will have that flip maneuver happen very close to touching down for splashdown. We'll do that flip maneuver, ignite those engines, slow the vehicle down immediately, and then hopefully have what we call a soft splashdown in the water. It's probably going to feel a little bit harder on the top of the surface of the water, but it'll look pretty gentle.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, we hope to have some more views, even of that phase of the flight. So fingers crossed that we can we can bring those to you. We are hoping to splash down softer than we did last time on Flight 4. Right now, Starship continuing to make its descent back to planet Earth.
Starship is at Mach 2, remains on a good trajectory.
All right, great news there. That tells us that the vehicle is traveling twice the speed of sound. So we will then, the next call out that we'll hear is that it is, traveling about the speed of sound. And then we will hear a call out that that will be the call out that it is transonic. And then we will hear another call out saying that it is subsonic, meaning going slower than the speed of sound.
Starship is transonic.
There it is. So at this point in time, we say transonic because certain parts of the vehicle, like the flap that you see on your screen, might be experiencing airflow faster than the speed of sound, while other parts of the ship may be experiencing airflow.
Starship is in the subsonic belly flop.
All right, so now the entire vehicle is traveling slower than the speed of sound, so subsonic. The crowd here at Mission Control Hawthorne also getting excited, just like us. We're awaiting a water landing. We are going to reignite the 3 engines to perform that flip maneuver, and we're basically about a minute and a half, away from the landing flip.
Yeah, the crowd's getting excited here as we get closer and closer to splashdown. Again, just about a minute away from the expected splashdown, so we should see a lot happening coming up here shortly. We're currently having a view of one of the flaps, and it is a little bit dark on your screen, but hopefully we'll get some good views of the ship as it makes that flip maneuver and touchdown for splashdown.
Yeah,
guys, we saw that speed drop like a rock. So we're doing a belly flip right now, or a belly flop right now. That's what's kind of, if you saw the high altitude campaign, that's the unique thing about how Starship comes back. So we've bled off pretty much all of the speed we're going to. We're essentially at terminal velocity.
Starship is at 5 kilometers altitude, remains on target.
Five to go. Coming up soon. Landing burn.
Two kilometers away.
Starship is on target, approaching landing burn startup.
So keep an eye on the bottom right-hand side of your screen as well. That will be the indicator when the Raptor engines ignite, if we are unable to see that illumination ourselves.
Landing burn startup.
What a cool view of the reflection of that landing burn.
We can see the water just behind the ship.
Starship has landed.
An incredible view. I think it is safe to say we have a ship in the water.
Touchdown!
That is a live view from the ocean surface. What an incredible end to Starship's journey. A live view from a buoy that we had out at the landing zone.
An incredible view of ship landing just about on target as they were calling out.
That was amazing. And we were not intending to recover any of the ship's hardware, so that was the best ending that we could have hoped for.
Man, I don't think we're going to be able to get a ton of extra video of the heat shield, but we hit the target. We hit the target. Yeah. I mean, we hit the target because we had these buoys placed in a pretty specific spot, so wow. What a day. I feel like that's what I get to say. What a day. I mean, everything started off today with that launch. We were able to lift off towards the end of our window, 7:25 a.m. Central Time. 33 out of 33 Raptors in the way uphill. Successful hot stage. Booster came back. We watched it come down right behind us. Watched it get caught. And that broke my brain for a while. I'm really happy we had coast for a bit, but that's first ever booster catch, major step on the way to rapid reusability. And ship just gave us one heck of a show, making it through a controlled re-entry this time, flaps intact, made it down to the water. Hey, Starships were meant to fly, and it sure as hell flew today. So let's get ready for the next one. Over to you guys.
They were meant to fly, and they were also meant to be caught by Mechazilla.
Yeah.
It's been such an incredible day today. Congratulations to our teammates and to everyone who supported the Starship program. And thank you to all of our future customers for your support. And we'll also like to thank the people of Cameron County, Texas, as well as the Coast Guard, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Government of Mexico, and the Australian Space Agency.
Now be sure to follow SpaceX on X for more updates on today's test flight and, of course, for future Starship news. Today was amazing, but the SpaceX action isn't over yet. Soon Falcon Heavy will launch NASA's Europa Clipper, and we're also going to be returning Dragon back to Earth with NASA's Crew 8 astronauts. So congratulations again to the SpaceX team. What an amazing launch and an even cooler catch. Thank you for watching, but we're going to leave you with an awesome recap of what has been the most epic day.